everybody, and welcome to ChasingCinema.com's 122nd podcast. As I'm sure most of you should know by now, I am one of your co-hosts, Jacob Toronto, and I am joined by my loyal, faithful co-host / best friend,
Louis Corazolo.
And we thank you for downloading, subscribing, or just browsing and finding our podcast and giving us a listen. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, what we usually do is me and Louis will talk about what we watched this week, jump into some movie news, and review the week's big release. However, because there has been 4 huge releases this week, well, maybe not huge, but pretty decent-sized releases, me and Louis are going to take majority of the podcast to review those 4. So Louis is going to hop right into some movie news. We're going to be very, very brief, and then me and Louis are going to be reviewing Kevin Smith's new film, Tusk, the new film starring Liam Neeson, A Walk Among the Tombstones, the new film from actors such as Tina Fey, Jane Fonda, Jason Bateman, that is This Is Where I Leave You, and a film called The Maze Runner, which is going to be pretty popular. So, Louis, what you got for us for movie news, and what's going on?
Nothing much, man. Some big movie news, for me at least, but I'm going to get that to the end of the movie news segment. First, some major casting news. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the rebooted Vacation family series they're going to do with Ed Helms, and possibly Charlie Day is going to be in there, and also Thor himself, Chris Hemsworth. But we finally got the sister. We finally got Audrey Griswold, and she's going to be played by Leslie Mann.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love that team.
I love Leslie Mann and Ed Helms would be a really good team. I was just thinking that.
So I'm getting very, very, very excited for this Vacation reboot. And usually reboots are kind of iffy. So hopefully this one kind of, with this great cast, it looks very, very promising. Other casting news that's very big. Comic-Con released a little clip showcasing a new King Kong film. You remember talking about that?
Yes, Skull Island.
Exactly. Some people are happy, some people are, who cares? But they got the star of the film.
I know who it is, and then I don't remember, though. Like, I remember being like, oh, look who got casted in this.
But you forgot
who it is.
Oh, that's too bad, because this is big. And there's a lot of people who love this man. Big following. And it's none other than Loki himself. Tom Hiddleston is going to be joining the Skull Island film, which is great. I think that's great for him. More publicity for him, more exposure. He's phenomenal.
He is really good. As we talked about when we were reviewing Thor, I think he's what makes the Thor films. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people agree with me that it should just be called Loki, because Thor ain't got nothing on him. But I remember when I did see that it said prequel. So this is Skull Island. Do you know if Skull Island's going to be more of a prequel to the King Kong story, or do you know anything about that? Because
no, like
we talked about, I don't read movie news. I don't know what the dealio is most of the time. I leave all that up to you. So you don't know if it's a prequel or not. I thought I read it's a prequel, mm-hmm. Which kind of deterred me, because I was like, then I don't know if they're going to do the whole Godzilla angle. And I'm really curious to see, because I want to know if he's playing, the director in King Kong, the actual film, or if it's a remake or more of a prequel. So we'll have to figure that out and get back to you guys on that.
Yeah, I just remember hearing that they're going to make the King Kong film. They're writing the script right now, and now they got Tom Hiddleston himself starring in the film. I don't remember reading anything about it being a prequel, or a reboot, or a sequel to the King Kong with Peter Jackson. So who knows? But probably more likely a reboot. But for me, the biggest movie news of this past week. This is huge. This is life-changing. I'm so excited.
I just Googled it. I'm sorry, Lily. Just Googled it real quick. From Slash Film and New York Daily News are all calling it a King Kong prequel. So
okay, so it's a prequel. So that's going to be interesting.
That will be interesting, because now that really makes me wonder where they're going to go. Because I don't know if they're going to do the King Kong or the Godzilla angle, or we're going to actually go through and tell the story of King Kong. Because a lot of people don't remember, there is Son of Kong and all these other films. There was like a few King Kongs. There was a decent, I think, 3 or 4 films. So. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. So, the biggest movie news coming out this week that got me really, really excited, that I wish they started filming this film, but they haven't even wrote a script yet, so it's ways away now, is there's a good chance that Matt Damon himself and Paul Greengrass is going to return for a Bourne 5 film. For the longest time, Matt Damon has said no more Bourne. He's done with that story. He thinks it's a perfect ending. And Paul Greengrass has stated himself that he doesn't think there's another creative way they could go about telling a Jason Bourne story. A couple years ago, Matt Damon retracted, well, Paul Greengrass gets involved, then I will consider doing it again. But Paul Greengrass was adamant, saying no, no, no. But finally this week, it's broken. Universal is getting Paul Greengrass and Matt Damon to return for a Bourne 5 film. And it's a separate film from the Legacy sequel that's coming out in 2016 with Jeremy Renner. So it's going to be two different films. Jeremy Renner, which I did not like. I hated the Bourne Legacy. It was a disgrace to anything Bourne. So I'm glad that they're not combining the two yet, because Bourne works better alone, just like Batman.
Well, you know what they're going to have to do, right? They're going to have to continue.
A crossover.
Yeah, they're going to. No, forget a crossover. Like, not just a crossover. Like, the Bourne's got. What's his name? Do you remember his name in the movie? He's not Bourne, obviously, but he's of the same breed as Bourne, right? That was the whole angle. Because I never saw the Bourne. I never saw the Bourne. Which one is that? I never saw the Bourne Legacy.
Okay,
but I'm not even sure, because I've seen clips of all of them. I'm not even sure if I've seen the whole trilogy altogether yet. and Louis has been trying to get me to watch these literally since the Bourne Identity. And now that I think about it, I think I've only watched the Identity. I've seen bits and pieces of 1 and 2. Never was a big fan of the trilogy.
It's one of the
not that I was a big fan, but I never just got around to actually sitting down and watching it. But yeah, man, you do like another 2 Bourne Legacy films and another 2 Bourne movies, and then eventually you just have the ultimate fighting weapons go head to head.
That'd be great. And Matt Damon as Jason Bourne better be Jeremy Renner. There better not be an upset, because I would be seriously and sad if that happened. But again, this is very early in development. They're still making the own Legacy sequel. They want to go ahead with a new Bourne sequel with Greengrass and Damon. So they could do a lot of things. I know people are saying it'd be kind of cool to do Legacy from the perspective of Jeremy Renner's character. And then during that, when they make the Bourne 5, it'd be during the same timeline, but through Bourne's perspective. So that could be interesting. But again, Legacy did not do it for me. I want more Damon, less Renner.
Yeah, to me, it's like whatever.
I mean, see that hurts me, but I think this is like the biggest movie news to come out in some time. I was like pumped.
Really?
Like, this is great, because I
know how much. Yeah, I really know how much you love those. So
it's an amazing trilogy, and Greengrass and Damon, they do great together. And I was let down by Legacy, and I'm very, very optimistic about this, man. And then getting to hear Moby's song, "Extreme Ways," excellent! What a cinematic moment. Do yourself a favor and go watch Bourne Ultimatum.
Which one's that? Third one?
That's the third one.
That's the best one.
The third. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, but yeah, I would say so.
And then is Supremacy the second best? Or
yeah, I like.
So it goes reverse.
Yeah, I would say so. If not, then I would say Supremacy might be the best on some days. The second one, but the last two, that's when Greengrass took over. I think Greengrass did a better job in Supremacy and Ultimatum, so I would definitely take those two over the first one. But the first one's great too. They're all great. It's a great trilogy. It's a great action hero.
I don't own them. I don't watch them.
I take Bourne over Bond.
So I'll have to pull you aside. I'll have to borrow those maybe, but even you know me, I still have Louis True Detective. I thought I even watched.
Oh, you need to watch that.
All right. So that wraps up movie news for this week, and we're going to hop in. We got 4 reviews this week, 4 movies. All I got to say is I was behind a computer or in a movie theater a lot this week, man. It was ridiculous. I went to Town Square, the AMC theater we have out here in Town Square, literally, I think 6 times this week. It was ridiculous.
Crazy.
I wrote, so I was writing a lot. So let's hop right into it because there's so much I want to talk about. First movie I'm going to break down is a film that I learned more about as I was writing the review and actually ended up liking it more as I was finding more about it. There is a crime mystery writer named Lawrence Block. Lawrence Block, come to my knowledge, is a Grand Master is a Grand Master, which is an honor given by the Mystery Writers of America, with his 18 novel long, 17 novels, and the last one's like a collection of short stories about a private investigator named Matthew Scudder, who in this film is played by Liam Neeson. We saw one adaptation of this with Jeff Bridges. I think it's called 8 Million Ways to Die, or something along those lines. But the 10th film in this series, in this long 18 novel series, is called A Walk Among the Tombstones. This book being adapted into a film right now with Liam Neeson, directed and written by Scott Frank. Now, the only reason why I say I get a little bit more emotionally invested is because of why. Lawrence Block is from Buffalo, New York.
Ah, there you go.
So, more power to him. And I'm just, but then I was like, oh, wow, he's from Buffalo. But then I was like, no, man. If he's from Buffalo, dude should have kept the movie in Buffalo in the book. Like, why is he going to New York City? Anyway, so let's talk about this. Ever since this movie was advertised, what was the one thing people were saying? Oh, this is just another Taken movie. And me and you have talked a lot that he has gotten very comfortable in his Taken role of being the badass with the hero, or the badass with the gun, if you will. Mm-hmm. But we both enjoyed Nonstop. And yes. We didn't think Nonstop was, anything harmless. It was a fun, exciting little movie. I also enjoyed him in the Lego movie, and I can't really say he played, Taken in that movie, even though he was a badass with a gun, and per se. However, this movie is looks like it's going to be going in that same vein, if you will. Okay, so I walk into this movie expecting like this Taken type film, and I really don't get it. And it's funny because I remember us talking about this film recently, and I don't know why, but this movie to me is a humongous homage, if you will, to Jonathan Demme's Silence of the Lambs. I think this movie is such an honor and just like a big salute to that film, that there's so much in this film that reminds me of that and just seems like it's taken right out of, because it is a very slow-paced mystery thriller that is so unlike Taken. So I will give Liam Neeson credit for doing a role, because his role is much more subtle. He's not as threatening or superhuman, quick fighting type character. Though there is a point where he does get on the phone and make some threats where you're like, oh damn. But
he does give the best threats in Hollywood.
When he's on the phone, I'm like, if you're making a Liam Neeson, he needs to be on the phone threatening somebody, and he's talking to these kidnappers, and he's like, something, and he says something, and the dad's like, oh my god, what are you doing? They have my daughter. So anyway, the movie tells a story about PI investigator Matthew Scudder, who is being hired by a drug dealer to find the man who killed and kidnapped his wife. The movie is, like I said, slow-paced. It's a very interesting mystery. Liam Neeson does a good job in his role. However, his character walks this fine line where I liked watching him, but throughout the many times of the film when he is facing a loaded gun, I wondered if I'd really care if he died. So I would say I liked his character. I enjoyed watching him, though I'm not sure if I was watching, if I really felt that I was watching Matthew Scudder. But I don't know if I was to the point where I was emotionally invested in the story. I think it is a very good movie and worth a watch. I had a very fun fun's not the right word, because I was very intrigued. Fun isn't the type of feeling you'd get from this movie. There is some very monstrous aspects of this film, again going back to Silence of the Lambs, that has this whole theory that if anyone are monsters in the world, it's the men, these villains in the movie. One thing I really didn't like about the movie, though, is that they have these characters, the villains, that we have kind of created in this real monstrous way, and then I feel like their kind of outcome is really anticlimactic. How they end up being, I mean, we have them on the phone, we never really get to see them until more towards a big reveal, but it just doesn't feel like they lived up to the hype, if you will. I felt that they weren't as villainous as how they were describing them throughout the entire movie when we finally come face to face with them. And I think the ending was a little bit anticlimactic. Anyway, a movie definitely worth watching once. Mm-hmm. I think that even twice. I mean, I really did enjoy it myself, but I don't think the movie is memorable. I don't think the movie is going to be something I will talk about in 5 years or 10 years, obviously. That's what I think the movie lacks. I think it really lacks something that kind of gives us something to hold on to or something to grasp onto. A shallow grave, if you will. But I think it is worth a watch. And if you are a big Liam Neeson fan, this movie's all about, go see it. It's definitely up your alley because you know what you're getting into. The film has been, they've talked how the film is very scary and kind of gruesome. And as James said in our video review, very scary for women. And I could see that, but though the film is very horrific in a sense, it isn't the most gory film you'll ever see, which is kind of nice. It doesn't actually have a lot of vicious gore and intense blood. Granted, there is blood in the film, but it's not as bad as you would think. The film does leave a lot up to the imagination, which I really appreciate. So yeah, any questions about A Walk Among the Tombstones?
I am a Liam Neeson fan. And even though I did not see this, I would like to see it just based on the fact that it is Liam Neeson with a gun kicking some A. So, I definitely see where you're coming from. From the clips and from the promotion, does look like they're trying to make it look so gritty and so dark. It's trying to make it look like
gritty thriller.
Very much like a gritty thriller, like you said. And they are throwing because one of the first clips you see on the trailer is like, they kidnapped my wife, I need help. So they're kind of throwing, hey, this is Liam Neeson.
They're selling the Taken aspect.
A Taken aspect of it. And I love Taken. I haven't seen Taken 2 because it's, for obvious reasons. So, yeah, I could see why you could definitely enjoy this flick on a Friday night. And for, film lovers, throwing the Silence of the Lamb homage in there is probably definitely appetizing mentally and visually.
Yeah, it's not so much a reference that's going on as much as it is like you could just tell that this filmmaker, Scott Frank, was heavily influenced by it. Especially the ending kind of has that whole. I mean, it's if you go in there, don't expect to see Silence of the Lambs. It's just
because there's no Clarice.
Yeah, there's no Clarice. He's at the end. There's not villains wearing night vision goggles or anything like that. But it definitely has that same tone. And I wasn't the only one who felt this way. Josh Bell, our good friend from the Las Vegas Weekly, liked this movie a lot more than I did. He actually liked this movie, I believe, more than every other movie that came out this week.
Wow.
So go check out his reviews. Good. He was on the Channel 13 News this week. Excuse me. You can always find stuff from Josh Bell at joshbellhateseverything.com. So go check out what he has to say. I have not read his reviews, but pretty much this week I was with him like every day because of all the screenings. So go check out what he has to say about A Walk Among the Tombstones because I know he liked it more than I. Moving on. Okay, we all know that one of my favorite filmmakers is Kevin Smith. I've been a Kevin Smith fan since pre-critic era, pre even really movie buff era. It was kind of right when that all was happening. I fell in love with the work of Kevin Smith. And I still do. I still really defend Kevin Smith. I think Kevin Smith has some really, really great movies. And you know what? Surprisingly, for as much as, kind of crap Kevin Smith gets, most of his films are well acclaimed. Maybe he's getting to a point where they're kind of balanced, but I mean...
Cop Out was well acclaimed?
No, Cop Out was not well acclaimed. But Chasing Amy, Dogma, Clerks, Mallrats wasn't really. But I mean, he's had really highs and lows in his career. I'll give you that. The man was, I think, like around late 2011, or I think 2011. He had stated that he was going to walk away from film. He was kind of done after his film Red State. After his film Red State, he kind of went to Sundance, made a big old thing about distribution and how he feels that there's no such thing as independent cinema anymore. And he went on this huge rampage, and eventually would lead him to say, I'm kind of done with filmmaking. I'm going to make one more movie or two more movies, and I'm gone. And he was going to go and finish with podcast. If you guys don't know much about Kevin Smith, he started off with a show called Smodcast. S for Smith and M for Mosier, his producer in a lot of his original films, Scott Mosier. It would be their two friends doing their podcast. He also would end up doing, multiple more podcasts such as Fat Man on Batman and Hollywood Babylon, which he would do with Ralph Garman. He would end up creating a whole podcast company called Smodco. So he was like, that's what I'm going to do. A lot of people like to see him do Q&As and stuff. The man has 4 or 5 Q&A. No, actually, I think it's like 6 or 7 now. Q&As, DVDs, and movies of him just standing and talking. So that was what was going to work for him, and he was kind of done with filmmaking. You fast forward to Smodcast episode 259. The Walrus and the Carpenter. Smodcast usually opened up with the gentleman talking about a news ad or some sort of story that is going on in the world. They discovered a story on Gumtree.com, and from my understanding, Gumtree is a similar Craigslist type site for homeowners and like renting out spaces and things like that. And there was an ad on Gumtree that offered, it went in the story that, it started off like, I'm a very interesting man. I have a lot of stories to tell. I've been all over the seas and lands of the world, and I want someone to share these stories with. You can come and live in this room that I have in my house. Free room and board. The only thing you have to do is dress up like a walrus for 2 hours a day.
I hope that's true.
He says, but in those 2 hours, you cannot speak and you can only make sounds of a walrus. And this is a quote. I believe you can find videos on YouTube.
Oh my goodness.
All you would need to do is act like a walrus and catch a fish or crab if I ever throw one at you. So this is an ad that they read, and Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier were at this point crying in tears of how funny this was. And just similar to like me and Louis do when we hear something, me and Louis will start going back and forth about how we can make that idea better or what we do, what would our spin be on it. Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier kept going back and forth and saying, "Oh, well, what if this guy, was a lot more creepy? What if he made a human walrus suit out of human skin?" And the podcast kept going on, and eventually they created the movie Tusk on this podcast. They say, if you want to see this movie get made, why don't you tweet #walrus yes. If you don't, #walrus no. Twitter was flooded with #walrus yes tweets, obviously.
Naturally, of course.
And everyone wanted to see this film made. Lo and behold, here it is. That is and the only reason why I went in such detail at that is because I think it's a major part of my review and how I feel like I see this film. But anyway, so Kevin Smith basically comes out of retirement or in the process of retirement to make Tusk. And it is the strangest, most odd and awkward movie I think I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen some weird stuff, and if you go into the world of avant-garde film, it's hard to beat how strange things get, or especially films, a lot of foreign films, depending on where you're going from, has a lot of weird things. So I don't want to say the strangest, but it is definitely an out there movie that will make you feel squeamish and awkward. However, I think it's a movie that everyone should see if you are a fan of Kevin Smith. But I'm going to warn you now, this is not Jane, Silent Bob stuff. This isn't Chasing Amy. This is nothing like Kevin Smith has ever done before, but I think it's a bold move for him because it is so out there and different. I think a lot of his jokes don't really... Well, here, I'll go back to that. I enjoyed Tusk, very much so, but I was one of those people on that podcast, so I felt, as a listener, that I was a part of that birth of a movie. Mm-hmm. I felt I was there on in the baby stages, and I felt like I was a part of something bigger than just going to see a movie. I think for everyone who listened to that podcast and tweeted Walrus yes, that movie's going to work no matter what, because you felt you were part of that. There are so many jokes from that podcast in the movie. For instance, the site that is called Gumtree. There's a character in the movie named Gumtree. For instance, another weird thing is Kevin and another actor named Ralph Garman, who also makes an appearance in this movie, has a podcast called Hollywood Babylon. In Hollywood Babylon, Ralph Garman imitates Arnold Schwarzenegger a lot. A fan cut his impersonation and made it into one of those remix auto-tune songs. They played on the podcast. Everyone loved it. It is actually the character's ringtones in this movie. There is so much embedded inside jokes in this movie that I feel like if you are an avid fan of Kevin Smith and you listen to his podcast, this movie will work wonders for you. But if you're not, even if you're a Kevin Smith fan, but you don't listen to his podcast and you're not, constantly updated on Kevin Smith, I feel like I'm afraid it's not going to work. So to a general audience, for someone who doesn't really even know what Kevin Smith is, because even if you know Dogma or James Bond Bob, going in this movie, you won't probably connect it to. I'm afraid that it's not going to work for everybody. And I think a good majority of people it's not going to work for. But that's not surprising for Kevin Smith works because Kevin Smith does all his money is through VOD and DVD and Blu-ray. Everything that he's ever released has always done better in home video than it has in the theaters because his target audience will go and get it. I think this film does have its problems though. I'm not saying this movie is perfect by any means. I personally, being in love with the medium of short films, and I think they're terribly underrated, and I feel like most people have no exposure to them. Feel like this would have been a perfect short film. I do feel at times it was kind of an SNL. Well, I don't want to say an SNL skit because that's how it felt. But just to show you an example, it feels like one of those SNL skits that go on for a bit too long, where it's like, okay, I mean, I got it, but it was really stretching. Though I will give the movie credit because Michael Parks is incredible in this movie. He plays the ultimate creepster and hilarious and terrifying. And even though, to me, like, see, I'm afraid that you might go see this movie and not know that it is a joke. This movie is a joke. But I'm afraid people are going to go see this and go, this is a Human Centipede knockoff, which Kevin Smith literally states in the podcast, this is too much like Human Centipede. But, you know, I mean, so it's not like he knocked off a movie. He clearly knows. Yeah. But, or they're going to be like, well, this movie's not, you know, not right. It's too, they might take it too seriously. And because in the film, the jokes don't really work. I felt it was very weird because a lot of the jokes that the characters cracked weren't very funny. I wasn't laughing throughout the picture. The biggest joke is the movie as a whole, but it was really weird not to find humor in this movie. At least at the joke part. Because like when we see some things and when we see some transformations, it's funny. Even though it's supposed to be terrifying. Because it is kind of squeamish at times too. Excuse me. But I do feel like it would have worked better as a short film. And but anyway, Michael Parks great in this film. In a surprise performance that most people didn't even know he was in here. Johnny Depp gives Michael Parks run for the money as one of the best characters in this movie. He plays a French detective, and a drunk French detective, and it is so funny. At times it is a bit much, but he is so funny. And everyone knows how I feel about Johnny Depp, but I tip my hat to Johnny Depp for doing a movie like this because it is so unlike him. And I'm going to guess right here, right now, it is going to be his lowest opening film ever. So,
it has to be. Easily.
I mean, no disrespect to Kevin Smith, no disrespect to how that movie's going to do, but I mean, we know Johnny Depp's numbers, and Kevin Smith's numbers are usually not that high. So... yeah, definitely. Well, if you are listening to this and you're like, I want to go see something I would never expect. I want to go see something crazy. Go see Tusk right now. If you are a Kevin Smith fan, go see Tusk. If you are listening to us and you have no idea who Kevin Smith is and you have no interest in a horror film about a human walrus, don't go see Tusk. But I enjoyed the film. If you are adventurous enough and you have a strong stomach, I challenge you to go see the film.
I'm intrigued. And I'm not a big Kevin Smith fan. You know, I listened to a podcast because of you. I've seen some of his films because of you. But I knew the basis of this, the genesis of this movie Tusk. So definitely that's pretty cool. Yeah. Like no movies are made like this today. So that's great.
And it's an amazing experience too, you know.
Absolutely. And seeing the clips, seeing Justin Long sitting in the chair, freaking out with his little mustache. It's not supposed to be funny, but I found myself cracking up.
But that's the thing, though. Like, it appears like it's not supposed to be funny, but it really is.
And that works for me.
That's what the problem is. I feel like people are going to go and be like, why are people laughing? This is terrifying. When the people who are laughing knows, like, this is hilarious. This is genius. So I think the movie really it's really walking on a fine line, and it was made for a specific demographic. Absolutely. That's the only reason why I think the film's not going to do well, is because he literally cut out a chunk of audience that this is for you. That's what
cool.
you should
for
do.
The fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely an experience that I feel, but you know, don't let that deter you. If you are interested, go listen to the podcast. It was Smodcast episode 259, "The Walrus and the Carpenter." That was the original. That was the original title of the film, but they ended up changing it to Tusk. But that's the name of the podcast. Listen to it, and you'll have a blast listening to it. And then you could go see the movie, and it'll still feel like you are kind of a part of it because you will hear so many inside jokes. But there are much way beyond just that podcast. But anyway. I recommend Tusk. I enjoyed it. And I'm doing my very best via Twitter to get that Kevin Smith on our podcast. So if I'm going to cross my fingers and hope we can maybe pull it off, we'll see.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Go see Tusk. All right, Louis, I'm going to take a quick breather and drink clear my throat, drink some water here. Why don't you tell people about the new film, This Is Where I Leave You?
Well, if Tusk is not your thing, or a Liam Neeson movie is not your thing, there's a dramedy coming your way that might be your thing. This Is Where I Leave You, which is based on the novel by Jonathan Chopper, follows the Altman family after the passing of the patriarch of the family, the father. But instead of grieving on their own, four older siblings must return to their childhood home and participate in a Siva. And for those who are not familiar with the Jewish tradition, a Siva is a week-long grieving process where all the family members stay under one roof and grieve with their family. So the Altman siblings must do this, and they must go and deal with their own troubles, their own arguments, and their overbearing mother, played by the lovely Jane Fonda. And Rupert Hughes is a very funny, sometimes very sentimental, loving, moving picture about what ifs and maybes and might have beens. And there's a lot been made about this film not being too great, that the material lets down the fantastic cast, and a lot of critics have been split on this film. I actually thoroughly, really like this movie. I very much enjoy this film. It is funny in parts. It would make you laugh. It would make you smile. But the greatest aspect this film has to offer, it has heart. There's a lot of loving, moving, sentimental moments in the film that just works. And the cast is fantastic. You know, you got the funny Jason Bateman, the great Tina Fey, Jane Fonda, Corey Stoll. You know, he's great in House of Cards and Nonstop he was in, so he's getting more exposure. And Adam Driver all make a dynamic family, and all their interactions are so fun, so unique, that you just become entranced by them. They're so likable. The chemistry is fantastic, and it reminds you of your family. And I think this is another great quality this film has, is that even though this is a unique family with, you know, facing problems that we may never face, but you still can find certain aspects of it that you could relate to. And I think that's really a great job by Sean Levy, the director, and Jonathan Chopper, making characters relatable, even though they might not be in relatable situations. Unfortunately, there are some flaws in this film. You know, I think at times it becomes a little bit too stale or overused material that, you know, very repetitive. That's not too funny, but they keep doing it and it makes it less funny. And sometimes it's overstuffed, too many side character, too many character moments that we probably don't need, you know, a little cliche here and there. But again, the terrific cast makes you forget about all the problems this movie may have. And you just sit back and enjoy it. I think Jason Bateman gives a wonderful performance. We mostly known him for his, you know, oddball, weird, offbeat comedies, you know, Horrible Bosses and all, and Bad Words. But he gives a very sincere performance, and it might surprise a few people. Tina Fey gives probably a most dramatic performance. And it's very spot on, very heartfelt, very insincere, and she was so enjoyable to watch in anything, and even in this. But the star of the film, we have to talk about one of the hottest sought-after actors in Hollywood right now, and that's Adam Driver. Adam Driver kills it in this film and steals so many scenes he's in, that he is just so funny, so dynamic in his performance that you just want more of him. He was great. And for those who are not on his bandwagon yet, you will be on his bandwagon after watching this film.
I actually really agree with you. It seems that most people have kind of been deterred by how they feel about this movie and haven't been super big fans of it. I agree with you. I really enjoyed watching this movie. I thought it was very refreshing. I thought it was touching. I thought it had the nice touch of comedy and drama. The interactions between the character, it seemed like they made sure every character had an interaction with another type of character, letting them all work together. And the chemistry that they all shared was what really made this movie enjoyable. Tina Fey had some really beautiful moments. I think she was my favorite aspect of the film. I thought Jason Bateman as well had some really good moments. There's a scene where him and Jane Fonda have a conversation. It is actually 2 times in the film they have these conversations that are really moving, very touching from Jason Bateman. Adam Driver, House of Cards, you know. No. Adam Driver, no, I'm sorry. I'm reading my notes wrong. Adam Driver is the screw-up brother.
Yes. Corey Stoll
who
is the House of Cards.
And you were telling me is right now.
What? Adam Driver, like, everyone wants a piece of him right now. He was rumored to be the next Nightwing in the up-and-coming Batman film. Saying. He's in the Star Wars film. So he's everywhere. So, you know, he might not do the Batman. It's just all rumors. But if there's an up-and-coming project, he's one of the actors that are probably attached to it.
Huh. But so anyway, my confusion. I read my notes on Corey Stoll, though, from House of Cards is very good in this movie too. Mm-hmm. I really liked his character because I think that of my siblings, I tend to be the Corey Stoll character that's sometimes a little bit too uptight, which might be hard to believe. But everyone just works and meshes very well together. The movie has nice touching messages. It doesn't end too Hollywood, but well, actually, maybe a little bit.
There's moments that are cliched Hollywood moments that kind of deter from the good aspects of the film. Yeah. But continue.
But like This Is 40, I think that film touched me. It was funny. It was drama. It felt very very natural in a sense, and I mean, it's not the most original film. It is not the most well-made film or beautiful-looking film, but the movie just touched me in a certain way, and I connected to it. And I overall enjoyed it. I'm trying to think of things in specific that I wanted to mention, but
again, like this film, I know you loved, well, not loved, but really, really liked Delivery Man for the same type of reasons. And this film kind of reminds me of a Delivery Man type film. Critics most likely are going to hate it. They're going to nitpick the film in so many different areas. But at the end of the day, it does have a nice message. It does have some memorable moments. And the cast is too good not to enjoy the film for, And again, it also reminds me like a August Sade's County type film with a crazy family. You just get thrown in there, Silver Linings Playbook type family dynamic where, going into this, it's like watching your own type of family in a way, but just with Hollywood actors.
Yeah, and I come from a family with 4 older siblings, so I was easily able to put myself in a similar situation, and maybe that's why I connected to the film more than a lot of audiences, because I saw my family in the movie a little bit and, could apply that to my life. But I honestly feel like the film has heart. It's there for a good purpose. It isn't too, offensive. It doesn't go to that lowbrow type of comedy. I mean, at moment there are a few little lowbrow moments. I think the whole Jane Fonda gag was a little bit much, but the movie works, and I did really like this movie.
Agreed. You could do a lot worse.
Anything else on This Is Where I Leave You?
Go see it. I think people might be surprised that, after reading all the harsh reviews, that you're probably going to like it.
Yeah.
Again, especially if you're fans of these actors in this film, then definitely go see it, because you won't be disappointed with Tina Fey's performance or Bateman's performance or Adam Driver. If you like those people, definitely go see it, because you will be rewarded with some hysterical, funny moment from them.
All right, moving on to the week's biggest release. Woo. See, you guys know, it's been a busy week. Moving on is going to be The Maze Runner. Now, if you have not noticed, if you've not been in the movie in the past year, then you have not known that this is the era of young adult novels. Young adult novels being adapted into movies, obviously led by Twilight, though I would argue Twilight is not the most popular anymore, with Hunger Games being the dominant young adult novel adaptation. However, we've seen films like Divergent, we've seen films like The Giver, and now we have The Maze Runner. And The Maze Runner comes from novelist James Dashner, who tells a story, the film and the movie, tells a story of a young boy named Thomas who has no memory, is launched into this big area in the middle of a giant maze. The area is called the Glade, and when Thomas is launched into this area, he is greeted by a community of boys who have been basically trapped in the Glade, surrounded by the giant maze, and the only way out, obviously, is the maze. Thomas, unlike them, however, is making it a big determination to find a way out. I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed The Maze Runner. Watching this movie, I said, another young adult novel that I felt has been cliched and unoriginal and boring. The Giver really put a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, Divergent was okay. Hunger Games I love. Twilight wasn't that great, but it did have a huge following. But The Giver really put a bad taste in my mouth. So I was like, ugh, again. However, this movie really, really paced itself well. The way it went about its story was okay. Because Divergent, Hunger Games, and The Giver all start out with a long diatribe of how we've come to be. So they'll say this has happened. Now there's district. Now there's communities. Now there's I forget what the hell the one. But anyway, they all have their own story, and they all starting to blend. But
very similar from one another.
And they all say this is where we are now, and this is how it is. That's not how it works in the Maze Runner. The Maze Runner literally opens up with you waking up with Thomas, unknowing what's going on in the glade. It throws you in the dark, just like your character, which also lets you be like your character by wanting to know what the hell is going on here. The movie keeps you in the dark smartly to let you be as curious as the characters. I also think, and then from that moment on, the film never slows down. I mean, the pacing is really, really well. Either it be these characters running around in the maze in intense action sequences, or just talking to one another. It is just, for some reason, the moment that cage-like elevator opens, I was so in. I was in the glade with these characters. I felt so engaged in this movie. That's the perfect word to describe the Maze Runner. Is it engaging? I felt so in the movie. That it was just really hard for me not to enjoy. The actor who played one of the most nerdiest characters we've seen on screen in quite some time, Will Poulter, in the film We're the Millers, does a great job in this movie. There are a lot of good performances. I think one of the major problems with The Giver is that its main character, I cannot think of his name for life of me right now, but was very bland. He didn't have much screen presence. He offered no real charisma. Granted, the one argument I hear a lot is, oh, well, they're in an area where no one's supposed to have feelings or emotions. They can't really be exciting, which is true. But still, I can't even remember the guy's name. I don't even remember he had no sort of presence.
Well, in the same sense, Jennifer Lawrence, too, has charisma.
Yeah, absolutely.
And same as Shailene Woodley.
So, I mean, and granted, Dylan O'Brien, the star of the film who plays Thomas, is no Shailene Woodley or Jennifer Lawrence. He does a very great job of balancing the film on his shoulders. I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed this film. Again, I think one of the problems with this week is that it isn't the most original films, but they all were very, very well at delivering a good, engaging, interacting movie. I think all four of them were. There wasn't a movie out of all these that I was bored at. I wasn't checking my watch, especially in the Maze Runner. 2 hours flew by in the Maze Runner. I mean, I was really, really inside this movie, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think the CGI was spectacular, but it wasn't terrible either. It definitely wasn't the highlight of this movie, which it maybe should have been a little bit. But I'm really glad on how the film was paced. I felt so curious that the way the film ends, it obviously leaves a cliffhanger because I think there are 2 or 3 more novels to conclude the Maze Runner that I'm like, all right, I'm in. You have me sold. I'll tell you right now, here's my money. Just tell me what's going on. Wes Ball did an amazing job with this movie. And I'd be the first to tell you, like I said, I was really hesitant, but it is just super fun. An absolute blast. It was probably one of the most fun times I've had in the theater since, the summer has kind of ended. And it's really, really different from most of these teen fiction adaptation films. So yeah, definitely go check this out. I really recommend it. It's hard to kind of argue. Louis, you gave This Is Where I Leave You a 3, right? 3 out of 4 stars? I gave Tusk and the Maze Runner 3 out of 4 stars. So it is a very good week at the movies. I gave Walk Among Tombstones 2.5, which is very close to 3.
Very solid.
Both very good. All 4 good reviews. So, if you're not doing anything this weekend, I would recommend this is the weekend you go hit the theaters and get some movies watched because it has been such a good, successful week at the movies. But if you have to pick one, I would recommend The Maze Runner. I think The Maze Runner was an absolute blast.
If you would have told me a month ago, or even a week ago, that your favorite film out of this weekend was going to be The Maze Runner, I would say no.
Yeah,
you're joking. You're lying. I can't believe that. And like you said, we are in the age of the young adult film, novel adaptation, and they all seem like they're so similar. It becomes almost unappealing. But I guess apparently the Maze Runner did good, and I'm happy for it because we do need a little branching off. We can't have the same formula over and over again, and hopefully get going more routes like this.
Yeah, because, I think it is a little bit... It is a dystopian thriller, which tend to kind of follow the same thing. But, even Hunger Games, Divergent, and The Giver have a very similar kind of setup of this is what the future is now, this is what's going on. But as in the video review that we do every week, you can find on youtube.com/chasingcinema, Hunger Games is on a pedestal of its own. Hunger Games kind of evolved from the teen fiction adaptation just being a really, really exciting, fun movie. And unfortunately, The Maze Runner is not on that level, obviously. But if I was to exclude Hunger Games and I watched Twilight, The Giver, and Divergent, I pick Maze Runner out of all those films because of how much fun I had. I think Maze Runner has kind of exceeded the just young adult audience. And I think I think anyone could go see this movie and have a really good time, be intrigued by the story. It doesn't really concentrate, unlike the other films too, it doesn't really concentrate on a love angle. There's no love story going on, which is really kind of nice and refreshing. Granted, love's in every type of movie, but it's just you eventually find out there is a female character, but it's not a love interest. But it's just about survival, and I just really dug it. It didn't give me much to dislike about the movie. Right on. I'm happy. I gotta check that out now. Yeah, you got to check out a lot, but you need to see Tusk more than ever.
Tusk is on top of my list.
And I got to go with you.
Yeah, please, let's go.
So, all right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Me and Louie have been watching a lot of movies, but you know how we're going to end this week. Me and Louie are going to hang up right now with Podcasted. And then me and him are going to be cruising down to the Palms to go see the one, the only Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. If you don't know who that is, do yourself a favor and YouTube Ian Anderson. Or
1978 Madison Square Garden, thick as a brick. Do yourself a favor.
Nah, Jethro Tull, Agualung, and I'm sure you've heard that variation in some sort of... In many movies or others, Sopranos, which isn't a movie, but 30 Rock, which isn't a movie.
In the movie.
Anchorman did it.
Anchorman, that's a movie.
So go check out that if you will. Well, go check out Jethro if you will, but me and Lou are going to go rock out because we're too young to rock or too young to what is it? Damn, too old to rock and roll, too young to die. So we're going to go enjoy ourselves. Guys, you have a great week. Have a great weekend.
No one is going to get that. That's amazing.
Upcoming guest. We have the director and filmmaker who made a beautiful documentary film on Elliott Smith by the title of Heaven Adores You. So that's going to be coming to you very, very shortly. I'm not sure if it'll be next week or the following, but very, very soon. We plan on having Dr. Jeff Krause back on, hopefully sometime soon, to talk about some more silent films. So a lot going on. Guys, go to ChasingCinema.com to read our reviews. Pretty much ChasingCinema.com/ the title of the movie. If it's This Is Where I Leave You, it's ChasingCinema.com/ This Is Where I Leave You. If it's Tusk, ChasingCinema.com/ Tusk. Go check out everything. You can see a huge, basically compilation of my thoughts on the new video review, and you can find on youtube.com/ ChasingCinema. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all that fun stuff. It's been a fun week. Ladies and gentlemen, I am one of your co-hosts, Jacob Toronto, and always I am joined by my loyal faithful co-host,
Louis Corozal.
And please continue chasing cinema.